Welcome to the NPTE Final Frontier podcast, helping one student at a time. Visit NPTEFF.com to enroll today so you can pass tomorrow. Thank you for joining us here on the NPTE Final Frontier podcast. My name is David.
And my name is Emily. Today, we will be discussing the importance of note-taking. So yes, as students, we have all taken notes before, but we really want to make sure that we aren't just taking notes when preparing for the NPTE, but instead taking condensed notes. During this episode, we really want to dive into how you guys can improve on your note-taking skills to make sure while you're studying, you're being as efficient and productive as possible. So when taking notes for each topic or reading, the notes really shouldn't be more than 1 to 2 pages in length. As students, I've been there. I know we really tend to get into the habit of wanting to write down everything and include absolutely as much information as possible because we think that's going to be the best way to study and prepare. But it's really not efficient, and it does lead to burnout and you feeling overwhelmed, and you just end up wasting so much time of your day taking notes and not really retaining or reviewing the information, which is the most important part of the notes. These notes should try to be bullet points, quick recall information, so that you can go back and review these topics easily. These notes should also primarily include information that pertains to us as physical therapists or physical therapy assistants. You also want to kind of write down any specific parts of that topic that you have difficulty remembering, find challenging, or any outcome measures or scales that are specifically related to that topic. So David, do you have any other recommendations on good pieces of information to include in those notes?
Yeah, for sure. All of us have been there before. And something that I found out is that when I was taking notes, I was that person that you shouldn't be, where I was writing down everything. And I would fall into so many rabbit holes where you would, just like anybody else, you would find some bit of information and then you would fall a little bit deeper, and then you would try to look up more and more information and you wouldn't get through that reading assignment because you would be so stuck on it. So in order for me to organize my notes a lot better, instead of doing that, what I would do is I would take the weaknesses that I was having, which is very important when you're reviewing everything, is after you do the timetable readings, you want to focus on your weaknesses. So in order to focus on my weaknesses with the note taking, what I did was I would create PowerPoints. And in doing so, this was a great way for me to keep organized because I was able to keep each topic for a PowerPoint presentation. And it was very much so a way of active learning for me. And what was great was that it was a great way of me just reviewing everything instead of going through every single notebook that I had, just flipping the pages. I was able to go through a PowerPoint. I could pull it up full screen. I could click next. And it was kind of like a way of index cards, sort of. And so using the PowerPoint presentation was really beneficial for me. I think that taking notes is so important, but you do have to be careful. Like you mentioned, you don't really want to have more than 1 to 2 pages in length on notes, especially for the reading assignments, because you are going to be overloaded. You're going to be overwhelmed. There is a lot of information in there. I think that you really have to hone it down, buckle in. And if you need to go back for anything, just like in the reading assignments, guess what? You can always go back to it, but at least get through that assignment.
Yeah, I really like how you use PowerPoints. I never really thought of that when I was studying. That definitely is a good, useful tool. I personally used Microsoft OneNote to help me stay organized. I would have different tabs for all of the different content topics and then divide those even further up into more specific topics to kind of help me stay organized and keep everything in track for me. And I think the most important thing that we should bring up at this point is that there are so many different ways to compile your notes. For you, PowerPoints work best. For me, using Microsoft OneNote worked best. There is no right or wrong or cookie cutter approach to this. Sometimes it's trial and error. Like you said in the beginning, felt like you weren't doing it properly. So you adjusted how you were studying to help you prepare, and that's going to happen. It's the best thing you can do is just learn from your mistakes and try a different approach.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that trying your own approach, that's the best way because then you're going to actually find out what works best for you.
And I think we also both just mentioned that we did more of like the computerized approach instead of handwritten notes. Did you ever take any handwritten notes or did you do everything on the computer?
So I did take a lot of handwritten notes, but then when it came to reviewing the handwritten notes, I realized that I was taking so much time in reviewing them because what I used to do, and it was very beneficial because for me, repetition was so valuable. I would attend the live lectures. And of course, during live lectures, I would pay attention to Dr. Singh and I would pay attention to what's being presented. But then the day after, what I would do is I would write out the entire PDF of that PowerPoint presentation in a notebook. And then after, while not just rewriting it, and then after I got done rewriting it, I would rewatch the lecture and anything that Dr. Singh spoke about, like if it was a rationale to a question, then I would write that into the notes that I just rewrote. Or I would write down the mnemonics that were taught or any specific ways that were mentioned that would make it easy to remember some things. I would toss that in the notebook. And that was really helpful for repetition. But I realized that going through and reviewing it, it becomes a lot of pages, Emily.
Yeah, it does. It becomes a ton of pages. So what I kind of did, I also find a lot of benefit in writing things out for retention and recall, but I knew for the sake of my notes, I needed it to stay more condensed, like compartmentalized. So I kept all my notes on the OneNote like I just discussed. But then I always had a whiteboard with different dry erase marker colors right next to me. So as I would write out my condensed notes, I would also be jotting things out on my whiteboard, easily erasing it to try out something new. I would rewrite scales several times until I kind of got the scale down. I would write different content topics, specific areas of that information out on my whiteboard repeatedly to also get that repetition without using millions of pieces of paper because I rewrote the same things over and over again until I was able to retain them. So that was my approach.
And yeah, I think that approach is incredible. So when it came time to review what you did, how did you go back and review everything after you wrote out the notes and after you looked through it? How did you go back to study that again, maybe a month or two down the line? How did you go about
Yes,
that?
I am very happy you brought this up. So, like I just mentioned before, right? You always want to make sure you're going back to these short and condensed notes to really make sure that you're reviewing the topics and help you better be able to understand the information. But I know so many students often say that they're overwhelmed. They don't really have time to go back to their notes. They feel like they wrote out all this information, but for what? They never got to go back and review it. One of the best times you can go back and review your notes is when you're reviewing your practice exams and reading through each question's rationale. When you see a topic that you say, oh, I really need to go back and review this a little bit more, I'm still having difficulty with this topic, that's a great time to stop, go back to those notes, and reread that topic. And remember, if you're making these short and condensed notes that are only maybe 1 to 2 pages in length or a few PowerPoint slides like David used, you should be able to review these notes efficiently and quickly. So I found when I was reviewing my practice exams, that was a great way to slowly kind of implement those topics again and keep them fresh on my mind. What did you do to go back and review your notes?
I did exactly what you mentioned. And something that I really tried to do was I had a tendency to focus on those topics where I knew that I had to look at again. I didn't necessarily go back to every single topic. I tried to focus on those weaknesses first. And then if I had time, then I would toss in the other pieces of information and topics. But my primary focus was always those weaknesses because they kept on coming up during practice exams, during classes. And I knew that if I did not focus on those weaknesses and I did not review that again, once it came to the game day of that exam, I was going to kick myself if I did not do that.
No, and I totally agree. I think so many students, me included, and I'm sure you are right there with me, you never feel like there's enough time. You always feel like there's something else you could be studying, something else you didn't get to. But I think focusing primarily on those areas of weakness is where you should kind of direct majority of your time. And then any extra time you have later on, sure, go back and review any of those other topics that you're already a little bit more comfortable and confident on. But really spending majority of your time for those areas of weakness is how you're going to best utilize the time you have to study.
Now that you have discussed the importance of note taking, here is a quote from Tony Robbins. Using the power of decision gives you the capacity to get past any excuse to change any and every part of your life in an instant. That's right, warriors. You have that power. You have that power to control everything. Make the decisions. Your decisions, when you make those decisions, stick by them. Be confident of your decisions. Why? Because you have earned that right to be confident in yourself. You are powerful. You are strong. You are a final frontier warrior. You will pass.
Thank you very much for listening. For more information on the NPTE Final Frontier, please visit npteff.com. You can also check out all of our social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
Till next time, have a great day and a powerful tomorrow.